Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated to a medieval Pokémon world. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 21, The Power of Magical Beasts. The next morning, light snowflakes began to fall. The old butler, Elif, looked up at the drifting flakes with concern. The temperature's dropping even lower. Lucien gazed at the sky for a few moments before replying, "We need to hurry." That same sense of urgency pressed on every resident of the territory. A light snow today could easily become a blizzard tomorrow. After hastily filling their bellies, the people immediately set out to cut wood for their homes. The snow fell steadily, and the temperature outside plummeted. Several children sat in a row under their tents, gazing at the whitened world beyond. Their small faces were filled with worry. 3 Snovers sat beside them, mimicking the children as they stared up at the snow. Despite their young age, the children knew all too well what was happening. They were lost in an unfamiliar land, their food supplies dwindling, their parents' faces clouded with worry every day. As the snow continued to fall, the children's brows furrowed. They couldn't help but worry that their parents wouldn't finish building the cabins before the blizzard struck. The Snover belatedly sensed their unhappiness and tilted their heads in confusion. "Snover, we can't play with you today," one boy said quietly. The Snover scratched their snowy heads, disappointed. The blizzard's coming soon, and Mom and Dad are out cutting trees to build our house. If the houses aren't ready before it hits, we'll all freeze to death," a little girl of 5 or 6 explained, her eyes wide with fear. "No, we can't just sit here," said an older boy, clenching his fists. "We have to help too." "But, what can we even do?" another girl asked, bewildered. "We can gather berries, collect branches and leaves, carry what we can, anything," the boy insisted, standing up. He turned to the Snover and said firmly, "You can play by yourselves today. We're going to help our parents." The 3 Snover blinked at him. They shifted their gaze between the children searching for berries and the adults chopping trees. They didn't understand everything, but they knew one thing clearly: once the people finished their work, they could play together again. If that was the case, then they would help too. Most of the residents were too focused on their own labor to pay attention. But a few men suddenly noticed the 3 Snover approaching a massive tree. A moment later, white light began to radiate from the Snovers' bodies, as if they were gathering energy. "What are they doing?" someone whispered in shock. In the next instant, the Snover released a surge of power. A thick, gleaming beam of icy energy shot forward and slammed into the tree. Boom! With a thunderous crack, the massive tree toppled to the ground. Everyone! The other residents turned toward the noise, stunned. What did those 3 monsters just do? The people had been hacking away at trees with their axes for hours, yet the Snover had leveled one in a single strike. Snover! The children, too, had seen what happened. Their eyes went wide. The Snover, meeting their stares, only gave a cheerful cry. Snow. The adults hesitated, confused, unable to understand the creature's intent. But the children quickly caught on. "The Snover are helping us chop down trees," a girl exclaimed. "What?" The adults froze where they stood, faces filled with disbelief. The demon beasts were actively helping them? Impossible. Yet it was happening right before their very eyes. Everyone stared in stunned silence at the toppled tree. But Ryan was the first to react. Lord Lucien was right. These 3 Snover truly were different from those ferocious wild monsters. Lucien had said it before: if you treat magical beasts with care, they will surely respond in kind. And now, with their help, survival through this harsh winter suddenly seemed possible. Ryan's chest swelled with determination. He turned to the crowd and barked. "Don't just stand there. Work together with the Snover." By the river, Anna and Zorua looked up at Lucian, their eyes brimming with excitement. Humans and magical beasts, trainers and their partners. Anna had been so thrilled at the thought of becoming a trainer like Sir Aaron that she hadn't slept a wink all night. Last night, she had clutched Zorua close and whispered to him over and over. They would become strong. Strong enough to protect her mother and everyone else. "Very good," Lucian said, his tone calm but approving. There were still many matters demanding his attention in the territory, so he didn't waste words. He went straight to the point. "Have you memorized everything I wrote on the parchment I gave you?" "I did." Anna answered loudly, then hesitated before admitting. "But there's still a lot I don't really understand. Things like attributes, abilities, evolution." Lucian smiled. "That's exactly what I'll be teaching you today." Chapter 22. Acceptance. Our world is home to countless magical beasts, Lucian began. They can be found in the sky, on land, in the ocean, deep in forests, and across the grasslands. However, not all magical beasts are the same. Some breathe fire, others unleash electricity, while still others scatter leaves and petals to strike their foes. And this is what I call their types. Based on their powers, magical beasts are divided into different types. Those who command flames are fire type. Those who manipulate water are water type. And Zorua, who releases dark energy, belongs to the dark type. Anna's eyes widened as she murmured, "Dark type. Then what about the snow monsters? Are they snow type?" Lucian chuckled and shook his head. "Not quite. More accurately, they are ice type. But from what I've observed, Snovers don't just have a single type. They are both grass and ice type Pokémon. You'll come to understand this more clearly once you observe them yourself." Anna leaned forward, captivated. "Types and energy are inseparable," Lucian continued. "The energy a Pokémon wields reflects its type. When that energy is focused and released as beams, blasts, or strikes, I call it a move." "I know that," Anna interjected. "Zorua's tricks, those are its moves." "That's right," Lucian nodded with approval. "Which brings me to today's lesson, how to train a magical beast and make it stronger." Anna and Zorua immediately sat up straight, listening as though their lives depended on it. In some ways, magical beasts are no different from us humans. We build strength by training our bodies, and magical beasts can do the same. Running every day strengthens a magical beast's legs, making it faster and more agile. Weight training develops raw power, shaping it into a mighty fighter. Of course, physical exercise is only the beginning. What truly makes a magical beast stronger is mastering its moves. The more often a move is used, the more skillfully it can be controlled. And sometimes, through practice, a magical beast will have a breakthrough and discover an entirely new move on its own. Anna's eyes sparkled with excitement. Lucian paused, not wanting to overwhelm her all at once. "That's enough for today. Try some special training with Zorua. If you don't understand something, come back and ask me." "Yes." Anna nearly leapt to her feet, eager to begin. Lucian let her go, then turned back to Dratini. "All right, Dratini, let's continue today's training." "Wha?" Dratini responded with determination. After spending time together, Lucian noticed their bond had grown. Dratini's trust had risen from 20 to 70. The little dragon had begun to rely on him. Once again, they focused on Twister. At first, Dratini had needed 4 or 5 seconds to gather its dragon-type energy, focus it in its mouth, and then unleash the swirling gale. But after yesterday's practice, Dratini could summon a Twister in just 2 seconds. Proof that her mastery was improving. Even so, Dratini was still a juvenile Pokémon. Before long, her energy was drained. Panting heavily, she collapsed limply into Lucian's arms like a fainting fish. Lucian chuckled softly and stroked her scales. "Thank you, Dratini. You worked hard today. He gazed thoughtfully at the river, mulling over his partner's potential. Currently, Dratini only knew three moves. Wrap, Glare, and Twister. Wrap could also be developed as an offensive move. A normal type technique, Wrap allowed Dratini to coil her long body around the opponent and constrict them. With enough strength, the pressure alone could inflict serious damage. Lucian considered the possibilities. Then, the Dratini in his arms let out a puzzled cry. Wha? A moment later, a faint crackling filled the air, yellow sparks arced across her scales, sending a tingling current into Lucian's hands. His eyes widened. This is... Dratini had awakened a new move. Dratini, try that again. Lucian urged, excitement brimming in his voice. Obeying instinct, Dratini hovered in the air as faint electrical currents rippled outward in waves, filling the air with static. Thunder Wave! Lucian exclaimed. The electric-type move didn't deal damage, but its pulse of electricity could paralyze the target, leaving them immobile. Wrap combined with Thunder Wave, constriction followed by paralysis, would give Dratini a powerful way to disable her foes. And with continued training in controlling this new electricity, she might one day master techniques like Thunderbolt or even thunder itself. Lucian couldn't help but chuckle at the thought. Perhaps, in the future, his Dratini could paralyze whole schools of fish in the river, making catching food effortless for the entire settlement. Nearing noon, to save time and finish building their winter cabins quickly, the people who had been working outside all morning chose not to return home for lunch. They pulled out their pre-prepared rations from their packs and gathered together to eat. Excitement rippled through the camp. Thanks to the help of the three monsters, they had felled several times as many trees as the previous day. Work that might have taken weeks was being cut down in days. The three Snovers, tired from their efforts, sat quietly beside the children. Though their bodies ached, their spirits were brightened by the smiles around them. You're really amazing, Snovers, the children cheered. The Snovers squinted happily, answering with cheerful cries of, Once the work was done, they could all play together again. Just then, several tall figures approached. Moon. The Snovers tilted their heads in confusion, but what they saw were not hostile glares, only grateful expressions. The adults carried biscuits, bread, and other food in their hands. Under the Pokémon's surprised gaze, the men and women knelt down and gently placed the food in front of them. Thank you, Snovers, one of the men said earnestly. The three Snovers froze, wide-eyed. This is our food, meant for humans, the man continued with a smile. If you don't mind, please have some. Everyone was thanking them. At first, these adults had avoided them, wary and untrusting. That rejection had stung, leaving the Snovers sad and confused. But now, the adults were looking at them with warm, grateful eyes. Overcome with joy, the three Snovers let out a delighted cry. Woo-goo! Though exhausted from working all morning, their hearts swelled with happiness. The humans were sharing food with them. They loved these people so much. Moved, one of the Snovers plucked a fresh fruit that had just grown from its body and shyly offered it back to the man. The man froze, staring at the innocent eyes and childlike expression of the Pokémon before him. And in that moment, a thought he never imagined crept into his heart. Perhaps, monsters aren't so frightening after all. Chapter 23, Fishing and Warming. Master Lucian, the fields have all been plowed. After a day of drying, we can begin sowing. Several farmers hurried over to Lucian, who was training his Dratini by the riverbank, and reported their progress. For the past 2 days, they had worked tirelessly from dawn until dusk, determined to reclaim the land and get the seeds in the ground as quickly as possible. Finally, they had managed to plow a wide stretch of fertile soil. Hearing this, Lucian nodded thoughtfully. He wasn't very knowledgeable about clearing wasteland, so he looked toward the dark brown fields nearby and asked, "Don't we need fertilizer?" One of the farmers shook his head. The soil here is rich enough. Being close to the river, it's already moist and fertile. Fertilizer won't be necessary yet. Good, Lucian replied. Then I'll leave the rest to you. Go to Elif for the seeds, he'll deliver them. Also, bring me a basket. A basket? The farmers blinked at him in confusion, but, without question, they fetched a sturdy vine-woven basket from camp. Wait here, Lucian told them. Then he turned to his partner. Dratany, get in the river and use Thunder Wave. The weather had warmed a little in recent days. Even yesterday, the sunlight had thawed the ice on the river. At his command, Dratany dove into the water with a splash. The next moment, bright yellow sparks burst from her slender body. From the shore, it looked like a glowing orb of electricity rapidly expanding through the current. Draw! Carried by the flowing water, the shock spread instantly across a wide area of the river. Within seconds, shadows began to float up from below. When they surfaced, the farmers realized they were looking at plump, unconscious fish. What? Several of them cried out in shock. Dratany, herd those fish to the bank, Lucian instructed calmly. The little dragon-type swam deftly, using her body to nudge the stunned fish toward shore. Gather them up and take them back to the settlement, Lucian said. Why yes, sir. Though startled at first, the farmers quickly obeyed, scooping the paralyzed fish into their baskets while sneaking awestruck glances at Dratany. Before long, 2 large baskets were filled to the brim with fresh river fish. It was a bountiful harvest, and the farmers' faces lit up with excitement. Lucian dried off Dratany with a handkerchief and tucked her against his chest beneath his coat so she could warm up. When he turned back, one of the farmers was holding a bright red, flopping fish. Put that one back in the river, Lucian said flatly. Huh? Why, Master Lucian? The man asked in confusion. That's a Magikarp, Lucian explained. They're all bone and scales, completely inedible. And they're stubborn by nature. If you let one grow, there's a good chance it will come back to cause trouble later. A magical beast? The farmers paled and quickly tossed the Magikarp back into the river without hesitation. Lucian cleared his throat lightly. All right then, good work. Let's bring the catch back. At the thought of steaming fish soup to warm their stomachs, everyone's faces brightened. Nothing could be more comforting on a winter's night. After training, instead of returning to his own tent, Lucian carried Dratany to the healer's quarters. Inside, Lila was busy mixing herbs into a bubbling potion. She looked up in surprise. Your Highness? What brings you here? I need a potion to treat frostbite and restore stamina, Lucian said gravely. Both medicines were important for Dratany. The frostbite salve would warm her chilled body, while the restorative draft would help replenish her energy after exhausting training. Of course, I'll prepare them right away. Lila quickly turned around, rummaged through her medicine chest, and pulled out several bottles. She carefully placed them into Lucian's hands. Thank you, Lucian said, accepting the potions. He was about to leave when Lila suddenly called after him. Your Highness. Lucian turned, slightly puzzled. What is it? I want to thank you, on behalf of everyone. Lila's eyes shone with gratitude. He had not only shared his herbs with the common folk but also provided her with valuable potion formulas. These recipes you gave me will save many lives, she said earnestly. Lucian smiled. No need for thanks. To me, all of you are more important than any formula. After all, what was a territory without its people? Lila froze for a moment, her heart stirred, while Lucian simply turned and left with Dratany nestled in his arms. By evening, news from the lumber yard reached him. Later that night, after finishing dinner, Elif, the old butler, entered Lucian's tent with a report. The first thing he noticed was the basket of fish on the table. My goodness, so many fish! Elif exclaimed in surprise. Lucian chuckled. They had been caught earlier that afternoon by Dratany's thunder wave. The settlement had no fishing nets, and catching fish by hand was far too inefficient to feed so many people and magical beasts. But with Dratany's help, fishing had become effortless. Together with the caravan's provisions, the people could now enjoy fresh fish as well, whether simmered in soup or roasted over the fire. Of course, fish spoiled quickly if left untreated. Fortunately, Ice-type Pokémon like Snover had joined the settlement. Their powers could freeze the surplus, allowing the fish to be stored for weeks. Between the gathered berries, wild fruit, and the baskets of river fish, the territory's food supply was finally secure. They could face the coming winter with confidence. After a brief moment of shock, Elif finally reported the day's events at the lumberyard. "Those 3 Snover actually helped us a great deal today. Thanks to them, we cut down far more wood than usual. If this continues, the housing problem in the territory could be solved in less than a month." The old butler couldn't help but grin. "Those Snover are becoming very popular with the townsfolk." Lucian raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Snover, helping with tree cutting?" From Elif's words, it was clear the people were beginning to accept the 3 Snovers. That was no small thing. It was an excellent start. Still, Lucian didn't linger on the matter. There were too many other problems waiting for him to solve. With housing and food temporarily secured, the next pressing concern was heating. His gaze fell to the brazier in the tent, where the charcoal smoldered. "Do we have enough charcoal to last a month?" he asked. The wooden cabins might keep out wind and rain, but they could not truly block out the bitter cold. Especially such simple, hastily built huts, they needed a reliable source of heat. Elif shook his head. "We've already used a great deal these past few days. At this rate, we'll run out before the month is over." "I see." Lucian sank into thought. If only there were fire-type Pokémon here. They could solve the problem of heating through the winter, and next year they would be invaluable for making charcoal, smelting, and even firing bricks for sturdier houses. But this was the dead of winter. Other than ice types, most Pokémon had all but vanished. Even grass types were difficult to find. Still, Lucian wasn't ready to give up. "We'll have to send out scouting parties," he muttered. They needed to learn what kinds of wild Pokémon lived within range of their territory. Chapter 24, Exploration Plan. Among the remaining knights, who has the sharpest swordsmanship, or the most experience fighting monsters? Lucian asked quietly, flipping through the parchment records of his subjects. Elif thought for a moment before replying. "There are only 5 knights left in the order. If it's swordsmanship, I would say Ryan is the most skilled. But if it's monster hunting experience, that would be Cleveland. He's a retired veteran who once fought alongside His Majesty. There was a war in which a foreign kingdom fielded captured monsters in its army. Cleveland took part in that campaign and survived." Cleveland. Lucian's eyes fell on the register of names. Soon he found the entry. Name, Cleveland. Age, 40. Occupation, Royal Guard Knight. Special abilities, none. Loyalty, 90/100. Biography. Born into a fisherman's family in the 108th year of the royal calendar. Enlisted in the Eindhoek army in 125 AK and fought in the war. Retired in 136 AK, only to return when he found his parents had passed away. With nowhere else to go, he rejoined as a guard. In 148 AK, he escorted the third prince, Lucian, to his new fief. Lucian studied the record in silence. Elif's face clouded with regret. Alas, if only Lord Geralt were still with us. Lucian's eyes narrowed. Geralt? The name stirred faint memories in the back of his mind. Elif sighed heavily, worry and sorrow in his voice. Sir Geralt was the greatest knight of all. He cut down countless monsters. But not long ago, to protect us, he alone drew away a pack of attackers, and never returned. The memory resurfaced. While the caravan was passing through a dense forest, they had been ambushed by a group of monsters. Mistaking the travelers for trespassers, the monsters had launched a merciless assault. Geralt had ridden out alone, leading them away. That was the last anyone saw of him. Against such relentless monsters, survival was slim. And Lucian noted with a grim frown that Geralt's name was missing from the current census. Then Ryan and Cleveland. I'll need them to scout the surrounding lands thoroughly. Lucian paused, then added, is there anyone in the territory skilled in painting? Someone who can help draw a map of the land, and of the monsters that inhabit it. Painting. Elif tapped his chin in thought. Yes, there is one. A young woman named Christina. She adores painting. Her work is so lifelike that even His Majesty once praised it. Christina. Lucian flipped through the records until he found her entry. Name, Christina. Age, 19. Occupation, none. Special abilities, none. Loyalty, 80/100. Biography. Born to a merchant family in 129 AK. Enrolled at the Eindhoven Academy in 143 AK to study painting. Became a royal court painter in 146 AK. In 148 AK, accompanied the third prince, Lucian, to his fief. A court painter. Lucian murmured in mild surprise. That level of skill would be more than enough. With that, he felt reassured. Ryan and Cleveland would take responsibility for combat and scouting, while Christina would focus on charting the terrain and sketching the Pokémon they encountered. It was a shame Anna wasn't ready yet. With Zoroa's illusion ability, she and her partner would have been perfect for reconnaissance. Seeing that Lucian intended to send the three on an expedition, Elif explained. Ryan and Cleveland are still at the logging camp, cutting timber and raising cabins. Christina went with the foraging team to collect berries. If your highness wishes to see them, I'll summon them at once. Thanks to the Pokémon assisting at the lumberyard, construction had advanced far faster than expected. And with Dratini's use of Thunder Wave to catch fish, along with the 3 Snover producing fruit each day, food was no longer the territory's most pressing concern. In this situation, sparing a few people for exploration would not hinder the community's survival. Bring them here, Lucian ordered. At once. Elif left the tent and soon returned with the 3 in tow. Lucian glanced up. Ryan he already knew. Cleveland was a tall, battle-hardened veteran with a scar across his cheek. Christina, by contrast, was a quiet, graceful blonde. What does your highness require of us? Ryan asked curiously. The other two waited silently, unsure what task the prince had for them. Under their watchful eyes, Lucian spoke slowly. I have a very important mission for you 3. It concerns the future of everyone in this territory. The 3 exchanged uneasy glances. Lucian did not mince words. I want the 3 of you to form a survey team. Your task is to explore the lands surrounding our territory, and, when possible, to push further out. Christina, you will map the terrain. Record every monster you encounter along the way, and bring your sketches back for me to review. Christina stiffened at the sudden responsibility, then quickly bowed her head. Why yes, your highness. Cleveland, Lucian continued, you have more experience fighting magical beasts than anyone here. Protect Christina. Ryan, support him with your swordsmanship. Cleveland frowned slightly. Exploring, he could understand. But the order to record every magical beasts they found. Did His Highness mean to capture them, chain them, and force them into labor like the creatures enslaved in the capital? That thought troubled him. Yet, recalling Lucian's conduct these past few days, Cleveland sensed the young lord was not that kind of man. Perhaps there was another reason, one he didn't yet grasp. Ryan, meanwhile, was more forthright. What exactly are you planning, your highness? Lucian's expression hardened. To be frank, our charcoal supplies will last no more than a month. But it is only December. The harshest cold has not yet come. The temperatures won't rise until late February. If the weather holds, we may endure. But if a blizzard strikes and our fuel runs out, we will have no heat. In such conditions, adults might survive through sheer willpower, but the children and the elderly will not. So, I'm sending you out this time to look for magical beasts that can breathe fire. I want to use their power for warmth. The others were taken aback. Your Highness, do you mean to rely on the strength of magical beasts? Lucian nodded, his tone serious. Our human strength alone won't be enough. We have to depend on the power of magical beasts as well. Just like those 3 Snover? Cleveland wondered silently. But Your Highness, Cleveland said aloud, calm and steady, with our current strength, even if we find a fire-type magical beasts, we may not be able to subdue it. Don't worry about that. As long as you find the right one, I have a way. Ryan's eyes lit up in excitement. I understand, just like Anna and her little Pokémon. Over the past few days, he had often seen Anna training with her Zoroa. She could even give it commands in battle. That was something only a beast master could do. To capture a powerful magical beast and have it fight by his side, Ryan yearned for that kind of strength. Don't worry, Your Highness Lucian. Ryan flexed his wrist, brimming with confidence. I'll see this mission through. Lucian didn't know what was going through Ryan's mind, but seeing his determination, he nodded in approval. In addition to fire types, I'd also like you to keep an eye out for several other magical beasts. He handed Christina a piece of parchment filled with rough sketches he had drawn from memory. The 3 leaned in for a look. Strange, abstract creatures stared back at them from the page. So abstract. Christina thought, her eyes widening in shock. But she quickly caught herself. No, I mustn't be disrespectful to His Highness. Lucian, oblivious to their reactions, tapped the drawings one by one, recalling their uses. Mareep, an electric-type magical beasts. Its fleece can be spun into warm clothing, and in the future, if we discover electricity, its wool could even help generate power. Female Mareep also produce milk. Pansage, Pansear, and Panpour, common magical beasts in Unova. Pansage's leaves can restore vitality and, when brewed, make a refreshing tea. They can also channel grass-type energy to help crops grow. Pansear can roast fruit with the flames on its head, up to 300 degrees. Perfect for baking bricks, firing cement, and making charcoal. Panpour's water-rich fur can irrigate fields, helping plants thrive. Trubbish. It feeds on refuse, so it can serve as a waste disposal system for the territory. Timber. It can shape timber and even produce concrete. With its help, we could construct sturdy homes with ease. And then there are combi, which produce honey, and fungus, which aid in fermentation, ideal for brewing juices in wine. Given our location in Unova, some Pokémon, like Miltank, Chansey, Wooloo, or Knackley, might not be present here. Chapter 25, Farming Day. The next morning, the exploration team, Ryan, Cleveland, and Christina, officially prepared to set out. Lucian, accompanied by his Dratini, and the old butler, Elif, personally came to see them off. Each of the 3 carried different responsibilities, and Lucian knew this mission might not be completed in just a single day. Ryan had a large pack strapped to his back, filled with food and water for the group. Cleveland carried weapons, flint, basic medicine, and other survival essentials. Christina, meanwhile, clutched a blank notebook and pen, ready to sketch and record the magical beasts they would encounter. Lucian looked at them intently. From here on, everything is in your hands. Yes, Your Highness Lucian. Ryan replied with a grin, thumping his chest with confidence. Christina, however, felt her heart tighten. Monsters, just thinking of them made her uneasy. Could she really complete the mission His Highness entrusted to her? Lucian's voice softened, though his gaze remained serious. Remember, no matter what happens, prioritize your safety. If you encounter a monster you can't handle, run. I only ask that you return alive. Christina blinked in surprise, then quickly nodded. Yes. Cleveland froze for a moment at those words. Return alive. He hadn't heard that in years. Long ago, before he left for the battlefield, his parents and the girl he loved had told him the same. But when he returned, none of them remained. Now, hearing those words again from Lucian stirred emotions deep inside him. Ryan, in contrast, could barely contain his excitement. Monsters weren't all terrifying. Some were kind and childlike, like Anna's Zoroa, or the 3 Snover that had wandered into the territory and chosen to help. Would he be lucky enough to meet others like them? Each with their own thoughts, the three pledged to complete their mission before departing the settlement. Elif's brows furrowed as he watched them go. Your Highness, do you think they can really succeed? At this point, it's all we can do, Lucien said gravely. No one is coming to save us. If we want to live, we have to rely on ourselves. He glanced skyward. At least the weather had been kind these past few days, warmer than the biting cold of before. It's time to begin planting, Lucien murmured. Elif bowed slightly. Colin and the others are ready. Colin, one of the farmers, had been preparing with the others. Lucien nodded. Farming was the foundation of survival for the territory. Let's take a look. Yes, Your Highness. When the two arrived, they found a crowd already gathered around the fields. Planting was a major event for the people of the territory, vital to everyone's future. Some of the women from the foraging team came to help, while several farmers, aided by two buffalant with their thick afros, sowed the seeds. The reclaimed fields were vast. If Colin and his small group had worked alone, it would have taken weeks. But with the buffalant and the united efforts of the others, more than half the seeds were already in the ground within half a day. They planted rye, white radish, potatoes, and winter wheat. These four crops were cold-resistant enough to survive the harsh winter. Potatoes in particular promised a high yield, more than enough to feed all 78 residents. Meanwhile, rye and wheat could be milled into flour for bread. If they could endure the 3 lean months until May, food would no longer be a constant worry. By then, whether to continue farming and building here, or to carry their supplies and move to the fertile land the old king had granted, would be a decision worth considering. Watching the scene, Lucien finally let out a long breath of relief. Far away in Eindhoek, the mighty Earth-Sword Castle rose atop a towering mountain. Inside the castle, the kingdom's aged king stood on the terrace of his chambers, overlooking the bustling city below. Behind him, 2 tall, handsome men knelt on one knee, reporting on the realm's current state and their assigned tasks. Father, the recent monster rebellion in Night territory has subsided. Our knights are now helping the people rebuild their homes and fields. Father. The old king listened silently. When the two finished, he simply said, "You may go." The two princes exchanged glances, then rose and departed. When their footsteps faded, the old king sighed. He was old now. In his youth, he had fought battle after battle, carving out this prosperous kingdom. Yet in his twilight years, he found himself unable to decide one thing: who should succeed him. Both of his sons were exceptional. Yet each had already gathered his own faction, their struggle hidden but ongoing. And his hesitation had left the throne's future shrouded in uncertainty. If handled poorly, a terrible war could engulf the kingdom. What should the old king do? He was torn, agonized by indecision. Suddenly, a cheerful cry rang out from behind him. Nini? The old king turned to see a small creature with pointed V-shaped ears and large blue eyes fluttering toward him. Victini? Nini. Victini happily nibbled on a cookie. But when it finished, a sense of emptiness washed over it. Nini. After so many years together, the old king no longer needed words to understand Victini's feelings. He sighed softly. You're worried about Lucien too, aren't you? Nini. Victini nodded hard. I'm sorry, Victini. The king's voice grew heavy with guilt. But I truly had no choice but to send him away. If he remained in the capital, his life would only grow more perilous. His power has already been stripped away. Nini. Victini lowered its head, wings drooping. Don't worry. The old king reached out and gently stroked its head. Lucien will be fine. The land I granted him is among the most fertile and prosperous in the kingdom. He will have a peaceful life there. Of his 3 sons, the eldest and second were twins. The youngest, Lucien, was slightly younger than them, and Victini's dearest companion. Back when Lucien was a child, he and Victini often played hide-and-seek in the great halls of the castle. But magical beasts lived far longer than humans. The king was old now, and death would soon claim him. Before that day came, he had one last responsibility: to protect Victini. The little Pokémon possessed immense power. If that power fell into the hands of his ambitious elder sons, it would bring disaster upon the kingdom. And so, after much deliberation, the king resolved to secretly entrust Victini to Lucien before his death. Chapter 26, Raising Magikarp? Satisfaction +1. Satisfaction +10. Satisfaction +5. The moment the residents of the territory saw the seeds being buried in the soil, a fresh surge of hope and anticipation welled up in their hearts. Lucien, on his side, received corresponding feedback. Lord name, Lucien. Territory, small, unnamed. Human subjects, 78, click to view details. Pokémon subjects, 7, click to view details. Public sentiment, 20. Satisfaction, 200. Technology, gathering, basic herbalism. Lucien was taken aback by the stream of notifications filling his interface. Satisfaction's already back at 200 so quickly? He flipped through the records, quickly grasping the situation. Over the past few days, the construction of wooden cabins had allowed many people to live in warm, secure shelters. And today, the sight of crops being planted gave them renewed hope. Their satisfaction with the territory rose accordingly. 200 satisfaction, that means I can unlock another technology. Lucien immediately opened the technology panel, scanning the available options. Gathering, unlocked. Branch 1, basic fruit cultivation, unlockable. Branch 2, basic herbalism, unlocked. Advanced herbalism, unmet requirements. Animal husbandry, unlockable. Basic processing, unlocks simple agricultural and byproduct recipes. Fishing, unlockable. Basic shipbuilding, unlocks basic shipbuilding methods. Mining, unlockable. Basic or theory, unlocks primitive smelting methods. It was the same familiar interface. Last time, he had unlocked basic herbalism. Now, advanced herbalism was also visible, but it required 300 satisfaction, which he didn't yet have. That left only the other basic technologies to consider. Mining? Not for now. They hadn't found any mineral veins in the territory. Animal husbandry? Also not yet. Without productive Pokémon like Miltank, Wooloo, or Mareep, a Pokémon ranch couldn't be established. That narrowed it down to fishing, or basic fruit cultivation. The pomelo fruit had already been discovered within the territory. But the harsh winter climate wasn't conducive to seedling growth. And according to Alif, the farmers already knew how to cultivate it, meaning they didn't need this technology to succeed. Unlocking it now would be a waste of 200 satisfaction. So, that left fishing. The thought alone made Lucien's eyes sharpen as information appeared before him. Fishing unlocks breeding methods for aquatic Pokémon. Redemption cost, 200 satisfaction points. Aquatic Pokémon. Lucien immediately pictured a familiar sight. The river where he had once seen orange scales thrashing beneath the water. Magikarp. Magikarp, a watertype Pokémon, was renowned for its absurd vitality. It could survive even in polluted waters, feeding on mud, aquatic plants, and tiny microorganisms. Its fertility was staggering. Magikarp could be found nearly everywhere, in seas, rivers, ponds, and even roadside puddles after rain. But for all its abundance, Magikarp was infamous for its weakness. It could not swim upstream even against the gentlest current, forever being swept away. Many joked that one only needed to glance into a puddle on a rainy day to spot a few stranded Magikarp flopping helplessly. Rumors claimed Magikarp had once been mighty in ancient times, but that era had long since passed. The Magikarp Lucien encountered was just like the ones described in the Pokédex in anime, frail in body, dull in mind, lacking both strength and speed. Its only move was Splash, an endless cycle of jumping that accomplished absolutely nothing. For that reason, Magikarp was widely ridiculed as one of the weakest, most pathetic Pokémon in existence. Alongside Phoeba, it was mockingly known as one of the twin weaklings of fish. Yet despite their pitiful state, both of these Pokémon underwent extraordinary transformations once they evolved. Gyarados, ferocious, mighty, feared. Ancient records spoke of Gyarados spewing searing flames that razed entire villages. In some regions, it was even worshipped, or dreaded, as the god of destruction. But Lucian, as someone who knew the truth of the Pokémon world, understood one thing clearly: Pokémon like Gyarados were not uncontrollable. Just like humans, they had emotions and intelligence. If raised from a Magikarp with care, trust, and food, berries, aquatic plants, and a bond built over time, then when it finally evolved, a Gyarados could become not a threat, but a stalwart guardian of the territory. The answer was clear: yes. The more Lucian considered it, the more viable it seemed. Magikarp required few resources to raise, and the rivers and forests already provided everything necessary for its survival. With that, Lucian made his decision and unlocked fishing. At once, the technology activated, and a stream of knowledge surged into his mind. Unlocked husbandry methods for aquatic Pokémon: Magikarp, Squirtle, Staria, Psyduck, Goldeen, Slowpoke, Krabby, Lugia, Kyogre, and more. In an instant, details of their habits and preferences flashed before him. But when Lucian saw the last two names, his mind nearly blanked. Lugia? Kyogre? Could humans truly hope to raise beings like them? Lugia, a Pokémon said to slumber at the bottom of deep ocean trenches. Known as the Guardian of the Seas. Because of its overwhelming power, it spends its days in solitude, suppressing its strength beneath the waves. Difficulty to raise: hell. Kyogre, the embodiment of the ocean itself, a legendary Pokémon that commands torrential rains and can drown the world beneath endless seas. It craves natural energy and revels in expanding the oceans, forever locked in conflict with Groudon. Difficulty to raise: hell. Lucian. His cheat code must be broken. Better to focus on the present. Lucian quickly scrolled past the names of legendary Pokémon and once again focused on Magikarp. Magikarp, a common fish Pokémon. Weak and simple-minded, it drifts idly in the water, often lost in daydreams. Its diet consists mainly of algae and microorganisms, until it's introduced to human-made Pokémon food such as Poke Puffs, Poffins, or specialized pellets. Extremely easy to raise. Raising difficulty: novice. That's more like it. Lucian exhaled slowly, a weight lifted from his heart. At the very least, starting with Magikarp was practical. It required almost nothing, could thrive even in shallow waters, and once nurtured to evolution, it might transform into a powerful Gyarados. Chapter 27, Building a Pond. What? Your Highness, you're raising a monster? When Lucian explained his plan, the old butler, Elif, nearly dropped the tray he was carrying. Don't be so nervous, Elif. It's only an experiment. Lucian calmly continued eating his breakfast. Magikarp were hardy Pokémon. With just a caretaker to watch over them, tossing a few berries into a pond each day was enough to keep them alive. They required little time or resources. But if even one evolved into Gyarados, the return would be tremendous. Magikarp themselves weren't very useful, but Gyarados were a different story altogether: ferocious, powerful, and versatile. A single Gyarados could summon rain to irrigate farmland or unleash hydro pump to defend the territory from enemies. It was the kind of Pokémon that could benefit both daily life and military defense. Oh, okay. Elif wiped the sweat from his brow, still unsettled. At Lucian's request, he soon brought over a girl who seemed suited for the task. Megan, 14 years old. She once cared for magical beasts in the royal city, Elif introduced. Lucian was pleasantly surprised. He looked at the freckled girl standing timidly before him. You've cared for magical beasts before? Megan nodded quickly. Yes, Your Highness Lucian. I was a slave in the royal city, assigned to tend to the magical beasts brought in by the knights. They were shackled and chained, and if they didn't work, the overseers would whip them. My job was to feed them and patch their wounds. I always felt sorry for them. Lucian's expression softened. Then I'll entrust this task to you. He rose, lifting Dratini into his arms, and gestured for Megan to follow. Let's go. The knights should have finished digging the pond. Yes. Megan stammered, her voice unconsciously turning respectful in the presence of royalty. Lucien noticed her nervousness and smiled. Don't be afraid, Megan. There are no slaves in this territory. This is honest work, and when winter passes and we settle down, you'll be rewarded. I understand. Megan looked at him with wide eyes full of admiration. Everyone says Your Highness is the most kind-hearted and noble ruler they've ever met. Lucien. That was a bit much. Still, faced with her earnest gaze, he could only smile gracefully. Soon, they arrived at the newly dug pond. The knights had redirected part of the river so water flowed steadily into it. At Lucien's signal, Dratini dove into the river. In a flash of golden sparks, she released a wave of thunder wave. Dozens of fish floated to the surface almost instantly. Every time Lucien watched this scene, he marveled again at how abundant the Pokémon world truly was. As usual, the ordinary fish were handed to the residents to take home for meals. Any leftovers were frozen by the Snovers and stored in the warehouse. Finally, 6 Magikarp were scooped from the catch and released into the pond. In normal circumstances, stocking a raw pond might cause the fish to die off. But Magikarp were Pokémon, resilient beyond ordinary creatures. Furthermore, Magikarp consumed the silt and microorganisms in the pond, helping to keep the water clean. Shortly after being placed in the pond, the 5 Magikarp regained consciousness. Their dull, lifeless eyes stared blankly as they drifted in lazy circles. Lucien had also instructed the knights to transplant water plants and algae from the river, ensuring a steady food source. He glanced toward the cultivated fields nearby. Perhaps in the future, this pond could house other water-type Pokémon, ones that could even help with irrigation. Your Highness, are these red fish the monsters I'm supposed to care for? Megan asked as she crouched beside the pond. Yes, Lucien nodded. They're called Magikarp. They're incredibly resilient magical beasts, able to survive even in the filthiest of ponds. In the filthiest of ponds. Megan froze. The word stirred memories of her own life as a lowly slave, scraping by in harsh conditions. She whispered softly, just like me. Looking at the vacant-eyed Magikarp, Megan felt a sudden surge of empathy. Fish, if you can endure, maybe I can too. But then she caught herself. His Highness Lucien had freed her from slavery. Now she was a citizen, just like everyone else. Soon, she would even have a warm cabin to keep out the cold. Her life was already changing for the better. Your Highness Lucien, I'll definitely take good care of them. Megan promised. Lucien gave a small smile and nodded. Don't be nervous. Magikarp are easy to raise. They'll survive on mud and plants, but since we've decided to raise them, we can't just leave them at that. Your job will be to cut fruit into small pieces and feed them every day. From now on, you are their breeder. He knew well that raising Magikarp wasn't only about survival. If a bond of affection and trust formed, their chances of evolving into Gyarados would increase dramatically. As you command, Your Highness. Megan said with renewed determination. Keep it up, Lucien encouraged. If he hadn't been so tied down with managing the territory, he might have raised a Magikarp himself. After all, a fully evolved Gyarados was one of the most formidable Pokémon in existence. Unfortunately, in this era without Pokeballs, he couldn't simply keep one at his side. At first, Megan only felt sympathy for the lowly creatures. But after several days of visiting the pond with baskets of berries, she noticed something new. The Magikarp would surface before she even arrived, bobbing at the water's edge as though waiting for her. The sight filled her with surprise, and a quiet sense of responsibility. Gradually, the awkward pity she once felt was replaced by something warmer. She began to find the Magikarp endearing. Though they couldn't speak, they were perfect listeners. Megan often sat by the pond, recounting her past in the palace. Fish, what are you thinking about? she would ask with a small laugh. The Magikarp never answered, their vacant eyes fixed on the sky. And, somehow, Megan found herself imitating them, staring blankly into the water, emptying her mind. Strangely enough, she began to enjoy it. Chapter 28, Conflict? Wild Pokémon in the Forest. On December 15th, year 148 of the royal calendar, half a month had passed since the caravan had settled on the valley plain. Inside his tent, Lucien sipped warm tea brought by his maid while Elif stood nearby, reporting on the progress of the territory. On the table, Dratini curled up comfortably, nibbling on the fish Lucien had prepared for her. They were made from perch he had caught in the river and carefully deboned. With no access to poke puffs or poffins in this era, Lucien could only experiment and devise his own ways to feed her properly. Elif, glancing at the little dragon, couldn't help but notice she had become plumper. The sight brought back memories of their journey from the royal city. Back then, the cold had only just set in. Frightened of the chill, Dratini had refused to leave the carriage, shivering day and night. The sudden change in weather and surroundings had cost her a great deal of weight. And now, she not only had gained it back but could even swim in the icy river with ease. "Your Highness is truly skilled at raising monsters," Elif sighed in admiration. Collecting himself, he continued his report. "Your Highness, the seeds in the fields have all been planted. Now, it's only a matter of waiting for them to sprout. The felling in the forest is also going smoothly. If no problems arise, all the cabins should be completed within a week at most." Elif's expression softened into a smile. "And, in the next few days, we plan to build you a proper winter home." At first, Lucien thought it unnecessary. His tent still held against wind and snow well enough. But he quickly realized it wasn't just about shelter. The residents wanted their lord to have a true home here, a symbol, alongside Dratini, that this land belonged to them all. So he accepted. This building could also serve as the Lord's Hall, a place for meetings and governance. "I understand," Lucien said with a nod. His thoughts drifted to Ryan and the others who had set out to explore the surrounding area. They still haven't returned? It had already been several days. Though their names still appeared on the citizenship records, the delay stirred unease in Lucien's chest. Elif shook his head. "Not yet, but do not worry, Your Highness. Ryan and Cleveland are seasoned men. Even if they encounter a dangerous monster, they'll be able to retreat safely." Lucien exhaled slowly. At this point, waiting was all they could do. "Your Highness! Your Highness!" The sudden cry shattered the quiet. A woman burst into the tent, her face pale with fear. Lucien and Elif both turned to her. "What is it?" Lucien asked sharply. "Your Highness, a monster," she cried, breathless. "A monster has attacked the lumberyard." "A monster?" Lucien frowned and immediately stood up. "Take me there." "Yes." Led by the panicked woman, Lucien, with Dratini at his side, rushed toward the logging site. After 2 weeks of felling trees, the vast forest edge had been cleared, leaving bare ground where rows of small wooden houses now stood. When Lucien arrived, he saw several knights standing guard in front of a cluster of civilians, weapons in hand, their eyes fixed nervously on the trees ahead. "Your Highness!" Someone spotted Lucien's arrival and quickly stepped aside. "Your Highness, please be careful," one knight urged. Lucien gave a short nod, then turned his gaze in the same direction as the others. Perched on the branches not far ahead was a group of Minccino, their large ears twitching, tiny paws clutching twigs and pebbles. They glared down fiercely at the humans below. Saiyan, the little chinchilla Pokémon chattered sharply. Lucien's eyes narrowed. "Minccino! Damn you little pests, get out of here and stop bothering us!" One of the frontline knights shouted, waving his weapon to scare them off. But the Minccino didn't retreat. Instead, dozens of twigs, stones, and even a few berries were hurled from above, pelting the knight. Ow! His helmet clattered as lumps swelled across his head. Gritting his teeth, the knight roared, "You little, guess I'll have to teach you a lesson." But before he could finish, the Minccino shimmered with dazzling light.
Cian.
Countless glowing stars shot from their small bodies. Swift. In an instant, a torrent of golden stars streaked through the air, engulfing the night in a blazing storm. He barely had time to cry out before collapsing unconscious to the ground. The villagers, who moments ago thought the tiny creatures adorable, now paled with fear and stumbled backward. The Minccino bared their teeth, fur bristling, as if warning that one more step forward would trigger another attack. Before Lucien could speak, the three Snover who had bonded with the villagers over the past few days moved to the front. These Pokémon had played with the children, shared meals with the families, and already considered this place home. Seeing their human companions threatened, the Snover growled angrily and began to summon energy, ready to strike back. Wait, Snover! The three Snowcap Pokémon turned, blinking at Lucien. Please wait, Lucien said firmly, stepping forward and motioning for the Snover to hold back. He looked up at the Minccino clustered on the branches and quickly understood the reason behind their hostility. The recent deforestation had destroyed their homes. That was why they had come today, to resist the humans cutting down the forest. It was the inevitable conflict between humankind's need to expand and the wild Pokémon's instinct to protect their territory. The moment Lucien appeared, the Minccino's sharp gazes shifted toward him. Sensing his presence as the leader, they raised their voices in an accusing cry. Cian. Lucien's eyes narrowed. There were only two paths forward now. The first, reconcile with the Minccino and try to invite them to live alongside humans. The second, forcefully drive them away. He quickly counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There were 5 Minccino in total. With his current forces, Dratini, Zorua, and the 3 Snover, victory was guaranteed. But Lucien knew very well they were in the wrong. They had destroyed the Minccino's home. His fists clenched. What should I do? Unnoticed by anyone, a small green Pokémon peeked out from behind a nearby tree, quietly watching the standoff between humans and Minccino. Vey. Chapter 29, Symbiosis. Humans and Pokémon were both part of this world. As a transmigrator, Lucien knew full well that humans and Pokémon could coexist. But how was he supposed to resolve this standoff? Lucien fell into deep thought. Around him, knights tightened their grip on their weapons, unease etched across their faces. The Minccino and the branches showed no sign of retreat. Their homes had been cut down. Their anger was justified. Kiri. The Minccino began pelting the crowd with stones and twigs, desperately trying to drive them away. Your Highness, please be careful. A knight rushed to shield Lucien. The 3 Snover, seeing their companions attacked, finally snapped. Go! They charged forward, unleashing their power. Ice Beam. Razor Leaf. Icy Wind. A freezing beam, razor-sharp leaves, and a bitter cold gale blasted the branches. One Minccino was struck head-on and fell with a cry. Cian. The remaining 4 Minccino's eyes blazed with fury. Cian. They retaliated at once, unleashing swift and double slap. Golden stars rained down, striking the Snover and scattering the knights. Stop! Lucien shouted, raising his hand. We can find a solution. But the Minccino were too enraged to listen. They leapt from the trees, surrounding the Snover and lunging toward the humans. Dratini, Thunder Wave. Lucien commanded. Wha! Dratini's body sparked, sending a pulse of yellow electricity through the air. One Minccino, mid-leap, froze as paralysis overtook it. Elif, get everyone out of here. Lucien ordered sharply. Yes, Your Highness, please be careful. Elif called, hurriedly leading the civilians away. Now, only Lucien, a few knights, and his Pokémon remained at the logging site. The Snover clashed with the furious Minccino, branches, and snow flying. Lucien's brow furrowed. I'll have to end this before anyone else gets hurt. He stepped forward. Dratini, use Twister. Wha! Dratini's body glowed with dragon energy. With a fierce cry, it expelled a swirling purple cyclone, sending a Minccino tumbling through the air. Seeing its companion struck, another Minccino darted toward Dratini in anger. Its tiny paws raised high, double slap. The little chinchilla was incredibly fast. Though Lucian ordered Dratini to dodge, the young dragon's inexperience showed. Dratini winced as the blows landed. Lucian's eyes sharpened. Dratini rap. Wha! Dratini's long, slender body whipped around and bound the Minccino tightly. She no. The Minccino squeaked and struggled, but Dratini's grip only tightened. Now, Thunder Wave! Lucian commanded. A flash of yellow electricity surged across Dratini's coils. Sparks leapt into Minccino's body, paralyzing it instantly. When Lucian looked up again, the battlefield had gone quiet. All 5 Minccino lay sprawled on the snowy ground, weakened and unable to continue fighting. Nearby, the 3 Snovers stood panting, bodies scraped and bruised from the clash. They glared at the defeated Minccino, ready to strike again. Enough! Snover, stop! Lucian called firmly. The Snover froze, looking back at him in confusion. Lucian stepped forward slowly, Dratini coiling protectively at his side. He knelt down before the fallen Minccino, meeting their frightened eyes. Each one wore a different expression, one openly weeping, another blinking back tears, a third biting its lip in stubborn defiance. It's over, they thought miserably. We've lost. We couldn't protect our home. These humans will claim the forest, and will be driven out into the snow to wander homeless. She no, one cried, bad humans. In their minds, they saw themselves trudging through blizzards, carrying little sticks with tied-up bundles on the ends, forced to leave everything behind. Lucian's chest tightened. For a moment, he felt like a tyrant bullying the weak. He let out a long, heavy sigh. I'm sorry, Minccino, he said quietly. The Minccino froze. Even the small green Pokémon hiding in the shadows, watching everything unfold, was startled. Did they really hear him right? This big bad human was apologizing? Shino, one of the Minccino, squeaked in disbelief. Lucian's voice was steady, but heavy with sincerity. I admit it, we destroyed your home. But if we hadn't, not only I, but everyone behind me, would have died in this blizzard. The words made the Minccino falter. Their round eyes shifted past Lucian, toward the group of weary villagers huddled in the distance. Death. To Pokémon, that word was terrifying. It meant never again waking to the morning sun, never again nibbling pine cones or berries, never again chasing one another through the trees. Lucian pressed on. We need these logs to build sturdy houses. Without them, people will freeze to death. These homes protect us from the wind and snow, they keep us alive through the winter. The Minccino's ears drooped. I know cutting down your trees destroyed what you called home. And for that, I am sorry. But, to survive, we cannot stop. His words were firm but not cruel, an honest admission, one that did not trample their pain. So, he said at last, meeting each of their tear-stained eyes, as the lord of this territory, I promise you this, when winter ends, when the snow melts and spring returns, we will plant a grove of fruit trees. A forest just for you, richer and safer than before. It will be your new home, with more food than you can ever eat. The Minccino twitched their whiskers, listening. Until then, Lucian added softly, if you're willing to trust us, come into our territory. Treat it as your temporary home. Spend this cold winter with us, and no harm will come to you. Chapter 30, Encounter. She no. The Minccino blinked up at Lucian, their eyes still shimmering with tears. My name is Lucian, he said gently, squatting low to meet their gaze. He tried his best to let them feel his warmth, not his authority. The little Pokémon didn't answer right away. Instead, they turned to one another, whiskers twitching, voices chirping in soft tones. Shino? Shino. Shino Chino. They squeaked and chattered, their high-pitched cries weaving into a flurry of debate. Lucien waited patiently, his expression calm. He knew trust could never be forced, it had to be chosen. Minccino, the adorable chinchilla Pokémon of Unova, were known for their love of cleanliness. In the anime, they'd often sweep dust and dirt away with their tails, determined to leave every surface spotless. Creatures so pure, Lucien thought, and yet we pushed them into this conflict by destroying their home. At last, the five turned back to him. Chino, they cried together, eyes sparkling with newfound resolve. Lucien raised an eyebrow. You agree? Chino. The Minccino all nodded vigorously. They truly had no better choice, but more importantly, Lucien didn't feel like a liar. If what he promised was real, then come spring, they would have a forest filled with fruit trees. A place overflowing with sweet food, where they could build new nests and play together among the branches. Just imagining it filled their hearts with warmth. Lucien exhaled deeply, relief softening his face. He called for Lila, the healer of the settlement, to tend to the injured Minccino, then motioned for the others to resume their work. The villagers approached cautiously at first, uncertain. But seeing the tiny Pokémon no longer bristling with hostility, they relaxed. They won't attack us again, Lucien reassured them. Until spring, they'll live alongside us. Everyone had overheard his words and nodded in quiet agreement. None protested, for after all, it was their axes that had felled the Minccino's trees. Soon, the steady rhythm of labor resumed. One by one, the trees toppled, leaving the forest thinning, then bare. The Minccino sat at the edge, watching their old home vanish. Sadness weighed on them at first, but to Lucien's surprise, it did not last. Less than half an hour later, their bright eyes wandered curiously toward the cabins, the fields, and the humans bustling about. Already, their natural cheerfulness was pulling them forward, away from grief and toward a strange new life. Charcoal glowed in the brazier, filling the tent with warmth. On the table, 5 Minccino sat together, nibbling happily on dried almonds. Beside them, a cup of steaming sweet black tea gave off a fragrant aroma. Chino. So warm. Chino. So tasty. Chino. So comfortable. Being able to eat such delicious food and enjoy such a warm, clean shelter during the harsh, food-scarce winter, this was something they could never have imagined in their old forest home. Their little faces radiated happiness, as if they had just received a fortune in demolition compensation. Lucien. Dratini. Lucien could only stare. Right now, he wanted to shout, "Hey! Where are your principles?" But as he watched the Minccino, he was reminded of something important. The forest outside was vast and brimming with natural resources. There was no way it belonged only to the Minccino. Deforestation wouldn't stop anytime soon. Building cabins required timber, and in winter, firewood was essential to survive. And wherever resources were abundant, Pokémon thrived as well. If this was the case, conflicts like the one today were bound to happen again. After a brief silence, Lucien rose and told Dratini to stay behind and help watch over the Minccino. Then he made his way to the lumber yard. There, the residents and the Snover were swinging axes in rhythm, massive trees creaking and collapsing with thunderous crashes that echoed deep into the forest. "Your Highness!" A knight noticed Lucien approaching and hurried forward, giving a standard knight's salute. Lucien nodded but let his gaze wander to the tree line. "Have you encountered any wild beasts while felling trees these past few days?" "Wild beasts?" The knight thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, Your Highness." "Oh?" Lucien's brows rose. "What kind?" The knight frowned and thought. "We saw a bird, like a pigeon. And a small, wary mouse-like creature, both bolted the moment they noticed us. Also, a deer-like one with brown fur." Lucien's eyes narrowed in recognition. The bird must have been Pidove, Unova's common wild pigeon. The mouse-like creature was likely Patrat, ever vigilant and quick to flee. And the deer, that would be Deerling, probably in its winter form. Did they show any aggression? Lucien pressed. The knight shook his head. "No, Your Highness. Probably our numbers scared them. As soon as they spotted us, they ran. Lucian exhaled softly. So it seemed the Minchino were the boldest of the bunch. Of course, it was also possible that the trees the Minchino had called home were being cut down, and out of desperation, they had chosen to confront the humans directly. I understand. Carry on, Lucian said firmly. Yes, Your Highness. The knight saluted once more before returning to his work. Lucian stood quietly in the snow, his gaze sweeping across the vast forest. The chill in the air bit at his skin, but a heavier feeling pressed at him, the thought that every tree they felled was someone's home. Then suddenly, a prickling sensation crawled up his spine. He was being watched. Lucian's instincts flared. He turned sharply, scanning the tree line. There, perched atop a nearby branch, was a petite, green figure. Their eyes met. It was a small, serpentine Pokémon with a sleek, green body, a cream-colored underside, and a yellow stripe running down from the back of its head to its tail. Though snake-like in form, it stood upright on two stubby legs, with tiny arms folded neatly against its chest. Its expression was calm, proud, and unreadable. Lucian's pupils narrowed in shock. That was Snivy, one of Unova's grass-type starter Pokémon. Across the snow, man and Pokémon regarded each other in silence, locked in a wordless standoff beneath the winter sun. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated to a Medieval Pokémon World. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.